my squat was just stuck at under 300. I would go up, go back down, and it's like, I'm plenty strong enough. Why is this happening? So I decided to ditch the heeled shoes, went back to squatting in my Adidas shell tops, brought my stance in, and, got the cue from, Chad, keep your knees forward just a little bit longer. And I went from hitting like 292 at Worlds to 319 at Nationals, and then 330 at the Arnold. So.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bletzer here with Doug Larson, Dr. Andy Galpin, hanging out here, and we're in Irvine, hanging out at
Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa.
Not even close. We're so
Oh,
far outside of Irvine.
You SoCal
5
native or
miles
no?
at least.
I was looking at the maps and it just got me thrown off.
Yeah, you're so unfocused right now.
We're back in the backyard of Chad Wesley Smith, the avocado trees, and we're here with Marisa Inda, and you're just like one of the strongest women I've ever met in my entire life. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation about how you got there. And one of the big things that I'm looking forward to learning about is what you may have found, because I assume that you train with a lot of men, what the training differences are between men and women.
Yeah, and I also know that you did bodybuilding for a number of years before you started powerlifting, and I'm wondering how competing in bodybuilding prior to being a powerlifter influenced your powerlifting success.
Okay.
I'm actually really interested in some of your lifting technique stuff. I've seen a lot of your videos, and your squat and your deadlift technique are unconventional,
Yes.
we'll call it. So I'd love to hear about how you develop those things and who you think maybe would benefit from those styles.
Definitely.
Yeah. How did you get started in the world of, we're talking about powerlifting and things like that, and we have bodybuilding that preceded that. What got you into fitness in general?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I love talking about lifting weights. But what got me started in lifting just in general is I was a gymnast. I was always very active, and that sport has a shelf life. I mean, obviously, once you're over 16, 17, you're kind of not going to go anywhere in that. So I needed something to do. I tried track. I hated it. It was the worst sport ever. I did letter, however. And then I just wandered into a gym one day at 17 and just fell in love. So.
Yeah, but you said it was before that, right? You were tricking kids out of money when you were 10 or 11.
So my brother had that, that garage bench, with the weights, the gray plates on it. So
Classic
and
plates,
coming from a gymnastics background, it's a lot of upper body work. So I was always really relatively strong for a girl in upper body. So my brother would have his friends over, and he'd be like, "I bet my sister could bench more than you." Like, "No, you can't." "Well, I bet you $10." and of course, I'm sure it wasn't like a powerlifting legal bench, but I hit 95 pounds at 12 years old, and we would hustle as friends. So
Do you do that anymore? I mean, you could probably still make decent money hustling.
I get some DMs for that, so I mean, I guess if I wanted to make some extra money, I could.
Oh, you could probably walk into an average bro gym and just get, find the guy with the tiny legs and all the body, and then challenge them to something that you can beat him at.
I might have to consider that if things get tough.
Okay, so you didn't want to do track and field, and you started lifting weights. So where did you go from there?
So to answer your question, because I started out in bodybuilding. So when I first started out, I saw a girl in the gym, and I just used to creep on her. She had a great body, and I just would, everything she would do, I would go and do it right after her. And from there,
No shame.
No shame. That's ultimate creeper status right there. You just lurk, and then you just follow them. And
That's a good strategy.
Yeah.
So creeping's a compliment.
It could be a compliment. I mean,
Careful now. Behave yourself, boys.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't press charges, you're good. But I just started, doing body part split training, which is like typical standard bodybuilding style training, and did a bodybuilding show. I met up with some guys in the gym who were trainers, and they're like, "You have a decent physique. You should, do a show." And I just started doing bodybuilding shows, and I did I want to say 6 or 7 bodybuilding shows at that time, and I placed really well in the teen division because there was no teenagers at that time lifting, and I would place about 4th or 5th in the open, and I loved it. The only thing I didn't love about it is as you get more involved into the sport, you're not going to do well if you're not doing drugs. So
Yeah.
It just was taking that turn. At that time, there wasn't physique or bikini. It was just bodybuilding. And the women just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was just wasn't a path I was going to go on.
Yeah, it did get weird there for a while.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and that's why figure and
And
bikini
that's what
came
spawned
along.
all those
Yeah.
other divisions. And, you know, unfortunately, you're kind of seeing that progression happen even within those divisions.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
Was there height divisions? Because in men, I think they used to have like under
Well,
6 feet. And
now
over.
they do, but back then it was just women bodybuilding and then men's bodybuilding.
So at 5 feet tall, you were toast.
Yeah,
Like,
and
no way you were going to be able to compete.
No way I was could be able to compete, and also I couldn't attain that level of leanness at the time. And you know, I was doing everything on my own, you know, trial and error with
Like
dieting and
clenbuterol
stuff.
And,
All those girls are doing,
Sure.
for the most part, all those things to get lean. And again, like I was 17, 18, 19 years old, and I didn't have a nutritionist. I was basically, you know, in the Flex magazine going, okay, this is what Kevin Levrone is eating. I'm not a man of 280 pounds, so I took those diets and like a recipe, I just cut it in half
Did it a third,
to
yeah.
fit my
Good luck.
and then I kind of just trial and errored it that way. But
Nice.
I think I just started powerlifting 6 years ago, so I spent roughly 15 years in a hypertrophy block of bodybuilding, and I think that's why when I transitioned over to bodybuilding, I just was able to lift relatively heavy weights pretty quickly, because in bodybuilding, you're not neglecting any muscle. You're hitting
Right.
everything, you're developing overall physique, and muscle moves weight. So I already had a pretty muscular frame, and I compete in the 52 kilo class, which is 114 pounds and under. And if you lined me up against all the other girls I compete against, I'm one of the more muscular, if not the most muscular 52 kilo lifter in the IPF up there. And I just think that helped me tremendously, because I also didn't sustain a lot of injuries. When you're doing bodybuilding, it's all 10 to 12 reps, you're doing, you know, sub-maximal weight, and I think I was just able to develop stronger ligaments, tendons, joints.
Right.
I wasn't pounding my body with heavy weight all the time. So
Yeah.
There's
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, I thought you were gonna go.
I was.
What else about bodybuilding did you really enjoy?
I actually enjoy, I know a lot of people think bodybuilding training is really boring because you're not maxing out, but I think the best
pump.
part about
Yeah.
bodybuilding is just watching your physique change and being able to be the sculptor that manipulates that change, that you can decide like, okay, my delts don't have enough, you know, pop, not enough cap, well, I'm going to hit my delts harder. So I think that aspect of watching yourself transform, staying consistent, is the funnest part of bodybuilding. It's not necessarily lifting the heaviest weight like in powerlifting, but I want to create the illusion of having a small waist, getting those bigger thighs. I think that's the funnest part. And I think that's the addicting part with bodybuilding. I think that's why people, when they first get into lifting, that's kind of what they gravitate towards, even before powerlifting. So
Before we go any further, I want to hear, what are your best numbers?
my best numbers. So I compete again in the 114 pound class and under. I typically weigh in about 112. I've squatted 330 pounds. I've benched 209 and deadlifted 413. So.
And
The current all-time total record, world record.
Right, so all federations,
All
like
federations.
you are
Right
like
now
the
it's
number
all-time,
one
number
lifter.
one. Yeah,
all ages, everything.
yeah, open.
Wow.
Yeah, not too shabby, I guess.
We need to
Not too sure.
I feel like we should be putting you in a cage with a bear and just let you go out there so see what happens.
Charging admission to look at you.
I tell everyone I lift heavy. That doesn't mean I'm functional for anything else.
So-
Just in this plane of movement.
So wait, just to clarify, you're how old? If you
I'm
don't mind saying?
41 years old.
So you're 41,
Yes.
and even compared to the 25-year-olds out there, you still
I
have
still
all the world records?
The all-time total world record, which total is the only number that matters in powerlifting. That's what
Of course it is, because you have the record.
That's it.
But, but in powerlifting,
That's
it
what
is.
powerlifters say.
yeah.
Like, well, there's a number that defines how strong you are, and it's whatever it is that they're best at. But,
Well, I
but
mean,
with it being the total,
yeah.
that makes no sense.
In-
but you hold that
Individual
too.
lifts, obviously, it'd be great to have
Yeah.
a world record in each individual lift, but at the end of the day, you have to be good in all three to win the
Definitely.
meet. So.
How far
Absolutely.
are you behind on the world records for the individual ones?
In the IPF, the squat world record is held by Susie Hartwig, which is an amazing squatter. I believe it's 342. So I'm not
Okay.
like
Too
too
far,
far
yeah.
behind. And to answer, kind of leads into your question. My squat was always lagging very behind until I changed my technique, which helped it
Yeah.
shoot up from the 300 to the 330 within 6 months. So,
Yeah.
and then on the bench, the world record on the bench is like 237. It's held in 1990. So that's bench is one of those lifts a lot of people complain about when they see it on TV, but the girl who holds the record has just great leverages, amazing arch, very short arms, it definitely lends itself to a better bench press. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I take a closer grip, and even though people think I have a huge arch, I still have to travel pretty far on the bench. So, 209 is not too shabby. I just gotta get better.
And from a leverages perspective, most powerlifters aren't built for every single lift.
No.
There's
Yeah.
usually
No.
one they're great at deadlifting, but not great at benching or something like that. There's always a trade-off.
Yeah, so there's always a trade-off. I think I've kind of in the middle where I'm not really built great for anything.
I guess that's kind of
which
what I was
lends itself
asking.
to be pretty good in everything.
Total.
So
Perfect.
yeah, in the total.
So you got into powerlifting. What was that journey like? You've been in it for 6 years now?
Yeah. So basically, after I had my kids, and I was still, I've always trained consistently, even through pregnancy. I was just kind of bored. I wanted something to compete in again. It kind of gives your training a purpose. It gets redundant, working out, doing the same things over and over, not having an end goal. And I saw a flyer for a powerlifting meet, and I had no idea. I'd never been to one, and I just jumped in. I didn't even know you had to pause the bench press. I learned that the day of the meet. I didn't know I had the wrong kind of belt. I had a bodybuilding belt, so I had to shave my belt down because it didn't meet specs. So I think that's a mistake a lot of new people make. They get all worried and they want to see if they're good enough, and they start checking numbers, this downside of social media. And then they're scared. Well, I've got to get better. I got to get better. I just jumped in and did it.
Yeah.
Liked it. And then from there I learned, okay, well, this is what I need to adjust to be good in the sport, because I was still training like a bodybuilder. So.
It's kind of like waiting to join a gym until after you're in shape.
Yeah, I'm gonna lose 10 pounds, then I'm gonna join. But yeah, so.
Well, actually, I want to follow up on that comment. There is typically people that get far down into powerlifting or weightlifting, for that matter, will look at bodybuilding principles and think like everything that they've ever done is completely stupid. It's horrible. It's awesome. But you're pretty against that. So what?
Yeah, I'm an advocate for incorporating both. I mean, if you even look at like a lot of bodybuilders, even though they're doing like partial rep ranges, they're muscular, and a lot of them, when they come over, they're strong as hell. Ronnie Coleman is strong. Johnny Jackson is strong. These guys, they're moving weight. Now maybe they're not doing it to the technical requirements that powerlifting requires, but they're strong. They have muscle. So I think the great thing about bodybuilding is that you leave there's no weak links. You're hitting everything.
So what principles did you carry over, and do you still use in your training, and which ones did you leave behind?
I left behind, well, now because I do powerlifting, I have more structured programming, so I have specific blocks, because in powerlifting, as you get closer to meet, you have to be more specific to the main lifts. But that's, for me, my peaking block is 3 weeks, so that's not that much time to just squat, bench, and dead. So I still incorporate all the accessory movements that I did before. I still do drop sets, partial rep ranges for things, even though people get so mad when you like have a partial rep for a bicep curl. I'm like, it's a bicep curl.
Right,
but yeah, I mean, I'm still
If
about.
that's the only bicep curl you ever did ever, then that could be a problem, maybe.
But it's like to everyone, you use a variety of things to enhance and tweak your physique.
Maybe like, well, this will give you a really easy example. Why would you ever need to do a bicep curl? You're a powerlifter. You deadlift. You never. Why would you ever need that?
So you can do Flex Friday for Instagram.
Ah,
come on!
Of course.
Flex Friday. We do everything for the gram.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Don't ski for Instagram.
Everything we do is for the likes.
Hashtag unplugged. Yep.
No, but I mean, because I come from the bodybuilding background, I don't want to look like the stereotypical powerlifter. I still think you can have a great physique and still lift heavy.
Yeah, and it certainly also is important for the deadlift, right? I mean, one of your hands is in that position,
I think that's
right?
why people neglect doing like triceps and biceps, because they're like, okay, well, I'm deadlifting, or I'm doing any pull movement that's hitting my biceps, or when I'm bench pressing, that's hitting my triceps. But I do it at the very end as just a finisher, so
and it hasn't compromised your lifts, obviously.
Has not. It's helped. So if it keeps helping, I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
So as you got into powerlifting, did you find yourself training with a bunch of men, or did you find women to train with? And how did you choose what kind of program you were going to do?
When I first started lifting, I've always had male training partners, and I think the great thing about that is they tend to push you. You can do more. You can do more. I think the difference between men and women can handle more frequency. We can handle more volume. It takes us much longer to put on muscle. I think that's why women tend to be so afraid to step into the gym, like, oh my God, I'm going to look like a man. Well, it's really not that easy unless you're injecting testosterone or you have some other issue happening. But it takes us 10 times longer to put on quality muscle. So as far as training goes, like I said, I've always trained with guys. I could probably I would always do extra sets or more volume than they were doing. And also more frequency. When guys bench pressing maybe once or twice a week, I could handle 4 times a week.
Yeah.
So
you think that's, not only because you're a woman, but also because you have gymnastics background? Maybe you're used to more volume just over your entire
Well, women
lifetime?
in general can handle more volume because we're not pushing as heavy loads. So where
Gotcha.
guys are, probably benching 200-300 pounds, most women, when they first start out, they're not lifting over 110. So, they're well under body weight. So you can handle more volume. Those muscles are going to recover much quicker. And you need the volume to build the muscle because, again, unlike our male counterparts, we don't have the same hormone structure. So it's going to take more time, more volume to build up.
Do you find that relative strength is really important there, where if you can only bench press 1 times body weight, you can handle more volume? Because if you're benching at 80%,
Yeah.
then you're only lifting 80 pounds.
Yeah.
So if you're a 150-pound person only lifting 80 pounds, then that's just not that much stress on your joints versus
Exactly.
someone who can bench 2 times body weight or 3 times
Exactly.
body weight.
And then leverages come into play too, because if you have a 6 feet wingspan and the bar has to travel so much further, you're going to take more time to recover. I mean, usually even lighter male lifters can handle more volume and more frequency than a super heavyweight can handle.
Yeah.
But aside from that, there's a special exercises only women should do. No, I mean, lifting is lifting. We all still have to,
Yeah.
still have muscle and bone and joints. So
2-part question.
yes.
So our friend Chris Moore used to always say that he felt that you needed a little bit higher intraset volume for the bench relative to the squat and deads. So, if you're going to do like a max single or a double and a squat, benching might need triples or fours, something like that.
Yeah.
So first part, do you agree with that or not? And then second part would be, are those different for females? So you said females need more volume, but is that from more sets and reps, or is that from more sets? Or
Are
is
you
that from
speaking
more-
to hit a 1 rep max?
Like if you're
or
trying
just
to
in
improve
general, or
strength.
trying to improve strength? Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely more volume, more rep ranges, and also more benching more times per week. Also, not getting hung up on the big arch and the technique.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of women think if I get my arch really big, I'm going to be able to bench 50 pounds more. No, you need more muscle.
Yeah.
So doing things like dumbbell pressing, more accessory stuff to complement the bench, or more bench variations is going to be helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll ask a better question.
Okay.
Do you think, for example, women need more reps than the men per set, or do they just need to do it more frequently? I think you answered the frequency part.
Yeah.
But you think the rep ranges per set should be the same?
Yeah,
generally?
if you're in a hypertrophy block, hypertrophy block is going to be the same for men and women.
Yeah.
That the rep ranges are the 8 to 12 rep range.
Cool.
So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I like how we cover the bodybuilding, hypertrophy, the training with men and women, and I want to break, and then in the second half get into your technique.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're actually gonna have you teach us how to deadlift. All right, we're here with Marisa, and she is gonna teach us how to deadlift today.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about a little bit of the technique changes that I have made that have taken my deadlift from 330 up to 413 pounds at my last meet at 112 pound body weight. Okay, so originally when I first started deadlifting, I've always pulled conventional. I had more of a wider stance conventional pull, and the problem with that I found as I was progressing and moving heavier weight is that my back would actually start rounding. I couldn't get my lats tight, and I would shift over the bar. So what has helped me is bringing my stance in. And a lot of people think it's very narrow, but I'm also only 5 feet tall. So my stance is about hip width. Bringing it in, really lining myself up with the bar, making sure that I'm distributing the weight evenly across the bar. Bringing my stance in also brought in my grip, which helped me maintain proper lat tightness. When it was wider, I couldn't get my lats tight enough. It shifted me over the bar, and that would mean I would have to round a little bit to bring the weight back in. So bringing my stance in, bringing my grip in with it, pulling my lats tight, and using my legs to push against my arms to cue that lat tightness, and then just standing it straight up, squeezing the glutes and the quads, and keeping that bar path straight up this way. It allows more leg drive through the floor, and that's what's really helped propel my deadlift, and also kept my technique really crisp even under heavier loads.
So you mentioned lats
Yes.
twice. Do you find that a lot of people don't engage their lats enough when they're deadlifting, and that leads to a sloppier lift?
Yeah, I find, especially like with clients that I have from the side, when they're setting up, they're usually setting up and not pulling back this way. When you don't tighten your lats and engage from here, what happens is you're loose from the top, and that's going to cause you to shift over the bar to generate the pull from the floor. So when you can create that lat tightness, keeping the bar close, pushing your feet through the floor, the bar just goes straight up where you want it.
So a lot of people that are competitive powerlifters, they're experienced deadlifters, they might actively choose to lift with the round thoracic spine. For those people, are they not able to engage their lats, and is that a problem for them, or are they choosing to do that for another reason?
If you're starting and you're initiating the pull from that movement, I think it's fine. I think the problem happens with newer lifters is they're starting from here, but then ending here. The people that usually start rounded that way, they've been doing that for a while, but they're also starting and initiating the pull. So the spine doesn't change throughout the movement. The problem happens if you start this way, neutral spine position, and then you start to round.
That's how I like to do it.
Yeah, that's the best way.
While we're on that,
Mike loves change.
yes. What about the rhomboids and the shoulder blades? So in order to put your lats in the proper position, are you also trying to squeeze them as hard as you
You're
can?
not trying, it's not pulling back as in the bench press, it's actually pushing them down. That's how you create that lat tightness. It's not this way, putting you into an extension in the spine, it's pushing down and back and down. That creates the tightness.
So the shoulders are still not rolled forward,
They're not rolled
they're
forward,
back and down, but we're not squeezing
packed,
here.
Correct.
Packed down.
So it's packed.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what other benefits have you found by bringing your feet in a little bit?
It's allowed me to keep the bar in line. So usually when I would miss a lift or when I would find that it would become a grinder, when I was out wider and I couldn't get tight, my hands actually would be out a little bit too wide. And then from there, the bar would kind of travel not in the straight line. It caused some unevenness. So when bringing it in, it's just allowed me to, and I'm actually not even on the grit of the bar most of the time. I'm on the smooth side. It's just evened the weight for me in a better way. So it's just.
Do you find that by bringing your hands in a little bit, you start from just a slightly higher position as
Yeah.
well, and so your range of motion is shortened just a little bit?
Just a little bit, because anytime you deadlift, you want to create long arm position instead of like the wide arm position. The longer arms you have, the shorter the range of motion. And another thing that has helped me cue is pushing my knees against my arms. And that way you don't have that buckling effect a lot of people have when you see when they pull, their knees will start to collapse in. I actually use my arms to cue tight, down, straight up.
Nice.
Has that changed your vertical position or not in terms of, are you more forward or are you back over the more?
I'm more behind the bar.
So you're sitting behind the bar?
Sitting behind the bar.
Now, have you felt like that's changed your glute or your quad activation? If so, how?
I don't feel like it's changed so much that. I think before when I was wider, it changed this from happening. From this to just being able to use
Got it.
more leg drive from the start instead of a lot of times people when they pull they try to just use the back and they're pulling like this and bring it in closer, just cued that leg drive, pressure through the floor, standing it straight up.
One last question.
Yes.
Why do you choose conventional over sumo?
For me, I'm just stronger conventional. So in powerlifting, it's whatever you can lift the most weight with. That's conventional. I personally think it looks more badass. But I mean, I do not neglect sumo pulling. I think that's a big myth, and I think it's a big mistake that people make when they're lifting is to just pull one way. When I'm in a hypertrophy block, I will pull sumo. When I was pregnant, I pulled sumo. So it has its benefits. So I would not neglect either.
Yeah, no reason to just choose one and say that's the only one I'm ever going to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, when you're considering maybe, or you have a client who's considering moving to a more narrow stance, who are those people that should think about trying the narrow stance? Is there any particular person that jumps out?
Smaller clients, I think, do better with a more narrow stance. Smaller, thinner clients, if you're a super heavyweight guy and you have a stomach, going narrow and trying to get in position is probably not going to be the easiest.
Like you're calling anybody out.
Well, not calling anybody
Chad.
out, but I think it's easier for smaller women, smaller men that don't have to deal with stomach issues to get into position. I mean, that's also why I'm able to keep the bar close. Usually you'll see more heavyweight guys that pull the bar out and then pull it back in before they initiate the pull. But that's typically guys, again, that have to, account for being a little bit bigger in the middle. Yeah.
I like how you said that.
Yeah.
That was nice.
And we're back with Marisa. And if you're just listening, make sure you go over to YouTube because we just did a technique video where she showed us how to deadlift. And she's definitely showing us things that you may not have seen before, and made some points that, I mean, even though we've been around lifting for a long time, good reminders of ways to do it, and the way she does it is specific to her. So especially if you're a shorter person or a woman, you might want to check that out. Next, we're going to be covering, we want to talk about longevity as a piece, and motherhood, and then talk more about the technique as well. So, you know, we just came out of like a technique piece. So what have you found over time that you've changed, aside from just deadlift and bench? And we talked about bench a little bit with the arch.
Yeah. I get a lot of comments on my technique for squat specifically. Everyone's like, I can't believe you, why is your squat stance so narrow? You need to widen your stance. Coming from a bodybuilding background, it was always high bar, more narrow stance. You know, you think of, can't even think of his name right now, but Crazy Legs, he was always a very
Frank Zane.
And you know, you mimic that. It's like the very narrow stance squatting. So
Arnold did it too.
So that's, you know, what everyone thought was going to, you know, propel their leg development. So I had squatted like that for 15 years, close stance, high bar. And so when I got into powerlifting, everyone's like, you need to widen your stance. It's the very geared lifting, like as wide as possible. And, you know, I tried that, and the big problem that I had is I would always shift back. I couldn't, it was hurting. And, you know, my squat was just stuck at under 300. I would go up, go back down, and it's like, I'm plenty strong enough. Why is this happening? So I decided to ditch the heeled shoes, went back to squatting in my Adidas shell tops, brought my stance in, and, you know, got the cue from, you know, Chad, you know, keep your knees forward just a little bit longer. And I went from hitting like 292 at Worlds to 319 at Nationals, and then 330 at the Arnold. So it's just stronger positioning for me. And even though a lot of people think it's very narrow, I'm not that tall. I'm only 5 feet. My squat stance is actually right outside of my hips. So, you know, for guys looking at it like that are 6 feet tall, like, oh, that's so narrow. But for me, it's you know, it's not like it's a couple inches apart. You know, it's right outside of where my hips are. So
well, so traditionally, and as you mentioned, powerlifting, you're going to take a wider stance so that you can clear your hips really easy. And so it shortens the leverage there. In your case, you keep your feet narrow, and your knees actually don't go really far outside of your feet. And so what happens is you have to sit sort of on top of your own femurs a little bit. That's what it looks like in the videos,
I think that's what people think it looks like. Even though I'm sitting on top of my knees, I don't have the valgus collapse that's happening. I actually try to open my knees a little bit at the bottom and then shoot straight up. So, you know, there are judges, and specifically in the IPF, that don't like that squatting style, especially when you're smaller and the bar is sitting low. You tend to have more of a forward lean. So the head judge typically can't see if you're hitting depth. But, I mean, so far I've been fine.
And you're able to do that, though. What's tricky about you can do that while still keeping your spine pretty neutral. So you're not having low back problems all the time, which would what most people would have that difficulty being. So do you have really flexible ankles? How do you get away with that?
I have good ankle mobility. So that's one reason that I ditched the heeled weightlifting shoe. What I was found what was happening to me on that is it would cause unbalance. So the weight wouldn't be centered over midfoot. It would push me forward. So to correct it, I would shift back. So when I was coming out of the hole, I would shoot into a vertical chin angle, and then I would stall out. Like I couldn't recover, especially when you have a max effort on your back. So just moving my stance in, dropping the heeled shoes. I think that's kind of the crappy thing about powerlifting is when you get involved in it, you have 20 different people telling you how you need to fix your technique. And a lot of those technique things come from geared lifting, because geared lifting was a lot more popular at first. So, you know, you have people like, you really need to tuck your elbows and bring the bar down to your sternum. And, you know, I tried all of those things, and I'm like, you know, that just doesn't work for me. So even in my bench, I'm an elbow flared bencher. I'm a narrow stance squatter, and I pull with a more narrow stance dead. And that's what has worked for me. And it's like I tell people, you have to find what's going to work for you and where you're going to be strongest. What works for me and for my leverages may not work for you and your leverages. So sometimes it's trial and error that's going to make that happen. So
it's hard not to get barraged with constant recommendations from people.
Especially
I've been doing this for 3 years. I know exactly what you should be doing. And it's, you know, and it's an experienced coach or an experienced athlete that instead of coming in and making a recommendation to somebody, just like, oh, I learned this way from this guy, and this is how everyone should do it, is why do you do it that way? You know, and I'm sure you get recommended a lot, but I think a more mature coach goes, oh, why do you do it that way? And they're there to learn instead.
Yeah, and anytime I've made a technique change, I stick with it. to see if is this going to work, or is it something that's not going to work for my leverages. It's not a strong position for me, and I just found that it worked. So, and I stuck with a wide stance for a few years, and it just wasn't progressing. So,
Right.
yeah.
Do you find that you showed up into powerlifting with a lot greater quad development than most people show up into powerlifting?
Yeah.
And that's why you squat the way you do, as an example?
Yeah,
One of the reasons?
I think, like I said, coming from the bodybuilding background and having that more narrow stance, my quads were already, I mean, my physique in entirety was pretty developed already, so I think that's just a naturally stronger position for me, and it's just carried over.
A lot of people are going to be probably apprehensive to the idea of using your quads when you squat.
Yeah.
Right, we hear this all the time,
Yeah.
this is a problem, quad dominant. So do you have, with your style, do you have excessive knee pain? Does it flare up a lot? Do you have issues there?
Luckily, I'm 41 years old. I've been lifting since I was 17. I don't have any major injuries or any major joint pain. So I don't have knee problems. I don't experience any of that. I don't know.
You're a fairy. You're magic.
I think part of it, again, was spending that time in bodybuilding and just really developing an overall good structure, and also keeping the ego in check. When I've had things that hurt, I don't try to pull a 1 rep max so I can get 2,000 likes on Instagram. I pull back and I stop.
How many likes are you getting on Instagram?
I don't know. I just, to me, it's more about, in the long run, staying healthy and being able to do the everyday things like tie my shoes, pick up my kids, go for a bike ride. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a mature lifter and being in the game for so long is I know when to stop, and I don't let, I let an RPE 7 actually be an RPE 7 and not an RPE 9.
Yeah.
Weird.
Do you find yourself having different practices in the gym or even out of the gym that other lifters aren't adopting, that maybe you go, oh, this person's hurt all the time, but I'm doing something different?
I stay in strength blocks, so a lot of times I see new lifters just get after that 1 rep max. I got to do 1 rep maxes all the time, or I got to be in that 2 rep max range. When I'm done with the meet, I go right back into hypertrophy, and I'm back in that 8-12 rep range, and I might toggle between a strength block and a hypertrophy block, but I don't even think I pulled a heavy 1 rep max deadlift until like I was 2 weeks out from a meet, and it wasn't even a rep max. It was beneath what I've done on the platform. So I save the big lifts for when it counts at a meet.
So if you had a meet, we'll just say 16 weeks out.
Yeah.
What do you do, like 8 weeks of hypertrophy, then 8 weeks of strength, or how are those blocks?
That's usually if I'm, so right now, for instance, I'm getting ready for nationals, I'm about 8 weeks out. So the first 4 weeks for me were hypertrophy, and it was actually kind of work around hypertrophy work because I'm working through a little bit of a piriformis injury, which happened from my last meet. And so, again, being smart, not trying to test it and pull from the floor. Then I'll go, right now I'm in the strength block. My peaking block is only going to be 2 weeks. So.
But you've been doing pulls, rack pulls, and you've been doing pulls on the blocks, right?
So
you
again,
still
like
do some
it's like
strength work.
even when you're having something that's hurting, to prevent it from turning into a major injury, there's always a way to work around. So since I'm a conventional puller, pulling from the floor was hurting just because being in that hinged position was not comfortable, and I needed this to heal to be good on meet day. We changed to me pulling from blocks and then just pulling a sumo from the floor. Just to get some work in, but not to injure anything. And it was actually very sub-maximal weight. I think from blocks, the max I pulled was 240, 45. So
we've talked a lot about hypertrophy and those higher rep ranges, and then pulling heavy weights, of course. A lot of people that follow Louis and on the West Side stuff, they have their dynamic effort lifts where they're basically doing speed reps. Do you do any speed training of any kind?
No, I don't do any of that. I mean, I try to make all my warm-up sets look like my 1 rep max. So if I can speed it up just a little bit for my body and the way my tempo runs, that's what I try to do. But I mean, I just try to keep consistent instead of trying to work through like, oh, this is going to be a speed day. Well, why not have every rep look the same?
Yeah.
So that's just the standard. Every rep is as fast as possible.
Yeah, every rep needs to be as fast as possible.
Yeah.
For me.
During the demo, you talked about being pregnant.
Yeah.
You're a mother of 2. You did discover powerlifting after pregnancy. However, you were training bodybuilding.
Yes.
And I know a lot of women are concerned about pregnancy and training. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, when I was pregnant, it wasn't like as trendy as it is now with social media. You see everybody, lifting
Pregnancy
weights
trendy?
while it is. I think it is trendy now. You see them all.
Everybody's doing it.
Everybody's
Yeah,
getting pregnant
everybody's
now.
doing it.
Just jumping on
But,
the board. Doug, you've been doing it again.
Dude, I'm just trying to be cool.
God.
Yeah, so I
Not cool at all.
No.
You guys are not cool.
Andy and I are lagging here.
Yeah, you're
You guys-
3 times as
you guys
close.
better get on it. But yeah, because I was used to being active, I wasn't about to like get pregnant and be like, oh, I'm gonna sit home for 9 months, especially because at that time, and again, this was before social media, not to date myself, but you know, before social media and all of that, I would have people that I worked with were like, oh, now you're pregnant, you're gonna lose all this now, you're never gonna get your body back. I'm just like, you know, that's your reality, not mine. So because I was so active, I just continued doing what I did before. My doctor was like, well, you've done it, you'll be fine, you just have to listen to your body. And you know, my goal at that time, and again, because I wasn't powerlifting, was just to maintain what I had, so not to lose anything. And I was able to squat, bench, and deadlift almost all the way through. I just switched from conventional to a sumo pulling to accommodate for the stomach. Ate regularly. I gained 21 pounds with both my kids,
Dang.
so it was just within the range, and they're both healthy. And
Did you do a wider stance squat as well to get out of the way, or?
yeah, as I got bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have a stomach till I was about 6-7 months, like a noticeable
Right.
stomach. So I mean, it's not like I had to make huge adjustments, but you know, you're still able to train. It's not a physique death sentence. You can still come back after having kids. I always caution women after they've had the baby is just to take it a little bit slow, because you know, things are, I hate to say this because it sounds disgusting, but things are loose, you know, like things have been moved and stretched out. So I think you see the new trend is as soon as a lady pops out a baby, they want to get under that 225-pound squat again. It's like, no, maybe, you know, get your body accustomed to movement again. I think that's also one of the reasons I don't, you know, pee the platform when I deadlift, is because right after I had both of my kids, I took it easy. I just did full body, really light stuff. I didn't put heavy weight back on my back until I was probably about my daughter was about 5-6 months. I started doing barbell work again. So I kind of took my recovery the same way that I did with my pregnancy and trimesters. 3 months doing this, 3 months doing this, and then 3 months getting back into the heavier lifting, making sure that, you know, after you have a baby, the hips, everything, the pelvis is kind of loose and stretched out. So I mainly just didn't want to be injured, and I wanted to make sure that I was still able to lift heavy, you know, 2 years after I had my kids.
Did you do any specific core work or pelvic work or anything like that other than just normal lifting stuff?
I did a lot more breathing and ab stuff. Again, after you have a baby, you have to just make sure the abs are not separated, because
Right.
if they are separated, then ab work can actually cause more damage. But yeah, again, just more full body stuff, kind of just getting reacclimated into lifting and getting familiar with my body again, because after you have a baby, it's not the same. So, you know, hips kind of stretch out a little bit. Everything's not where it once was. So
How old are your kids now?
my daughter's 13 and my son's 11.
Yeah. How has it been? You know, I know a lot of women have a hard time getting in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I've got kids, I got to take care of them now, because that's a huge shift. If you go from never, you know, you live your whole life without children, and then now you have to take care of 1 or 2 other people.
Yeah.
And how does that change your schedule?
Yeah, it definitely requires more schedule management, especially in the very beginning when you have a newborn and they're crying and, you know, you're tired. I think I cried more than my daughter when I first had my daughter, because she was the biggest crybaby. She didn't sleep till she was 3 years old, and yeah, I mean, 3 daycares quit on me, if that's any indication of how terrible she was.
Wow.
But
I'm in the same boat.
yeah, I actually, it's terrible,
We
right?
keep kicking Doug out of the
yeah.
nest.
I'm in the opposite boat. My kids fucking sleep amazing.
Oh, I hate you.
day.
Parents like me hate parents like you. But, you know, I actually was working a 9-to-5 job at the time, so I would go train during my lunch break, because that's the only time I had. And I know a lot of new moms kind of feel selfish, like, oh, I'm going to the gym, it's taking time away from my baby. But 45 minutes to yourself, to where you can like go, okay, I'm not going to strangle this child today. I think it saves their life.
It's good for everybody.
It's good for everybody. Plus, it gives you some semblance of normalcy. Just because you have kids, you don't need to live vicariously through them. You can still have goals. You can still be competitive in the things that you like, be it if it's lifting or kayaking or whatever it is you enjoy doing. When your kids see you doing that, I think it puts them on a good path to have their own goals and to know that you can still chase your dreams, and kids don't prevent you from doing that. If anything, I have a bigger cheering section. Or not. My daughter's very critical, but.
Do your kids lift?
You know what? It sucks, because my daughter is amazingly strong. About 2 years ago, she wanted to go to the gym, and I'm putting her through like full body stuff. She did gymnastics, when she was younger, and I was just amazed at how strong she is. But now she's 13. God forbid she get man hands. Mom, I don't want man hands like you. I don't want people to think I look manly. I'm just like, oh my God. But she's 13, so I just leave her.
Yeah.
But she did the other day tell me she wants a bikini butt, so whatever gets him in the gym.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are weird or resistant to putting their kids into like a strength sport when they're like 10, 11, 12 years old. Like lifting weights is bad for you, but like have no problem putting their kids into gymnastics.
Yeah.
Which is like almost all strength training, depending on how you look at it.
I think gymnastics, honestly, I think is the best sport you can put your kids in the very beginning. Both my son and my daughter did tumbling, not even to be in the competitive route, but I think it teaches body awareness. It teaches you, where your spatial awareness when you're doing the tumbling. And I think it's just, especially for girls, it's a very good beginning to upper body strength development. Most girls cannot do a pull-up. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had the physical fitness test and we were doing arm hangs, but even for the boys, they eliminated that. Like you don't even have to do that anymore as a child. So I think for kids, gymnastics is like a great sport and to start out with, and I think it has good transfer into all the other sports that you want to have your kids do. And I tell my kids to do multiple things. Don't just get stuck on one right now. Just
Yeah.
I remember doing something really similar because I did gymnastics when I was a little kid too, from
Well,
like
you're
when I was
awesome.
like 4 until I was like 9. Yeah, it really did help me for the whole rest of my life, especially with mobility and good strength development from an early age. But I remember doing the presidential physical fitness thing too when I lived in Arizona. We're outside, it's like the whole class is out there, and me and my buddy Ricky, who we did gymnastics together.
Remembers his
like,
name and everything.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh yeah, dude, I
it's
remember
a
that
very
kid.
momentous
Like,
occasion when you get that thing signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
say what?
The paper.
Award, the paper.
Yeah, the paper.
It's signed by Arnold.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. But like we were out there, and I remember like literally being confused because I never like worked out with my class at school, but I worked out with Ricky all the time because we were in gymnastics together, and all the kids like can barely hang over the bar, and then I did like 10 pull-ups, and Ricky did like 18 or something like that. We were just like, what is wrong with all these kids? We were so far ahead because we had done gymnastics growing up.
I think it just is a great intro to just upper body development, and that's why I love calisthenics so much now too. It's you kind of can still lift weights, but I'm still able to move and do fancy tricks, and
Most
How dare
powerlifters
you
aren't
do
doing
that?
calisthenics.
No.
Most people are like, if it's not a weight, I don't want to do it.
And I'm all about balance and having fun, and I don't lift heavy just so I can lift heavy. I lift heavy so that I'm able to do other things and have fun.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Really impressed with your ability to think long term. Being 41 years old, super healthy, strongest woman on the planet, and that's due to the fact that you really taken care of yourself along the way. I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like getting the reminder that bodybuilding specifically makes it where you don't have any weaknesses showing up. All muscle groups are developed, and that's really important for your longevity and for like ultimate strength development as well as injury prevention.
Yep.
I was really interested, particularly right now with where I'm at in my life, of your advice for training when pregnant. And the fact that you don't have to compromise your physique, and that you can pretty much keep to what you're doing and small alterations, and you can keep things going.
Yeah. Where can people find more about you?
Well, I'm on YouTube and on Instagram under Marisa Inda. I also have an ebook that just came out. It's called Fuerza, A Female's Guide to Strength and Physique. So just how to combine the two and how strength is like a path to having aesthetics. And it talks about pregnancy, calisthenics, cardio, nutrition, a little bit of everything, kind of my journey through lifting.
Excellent.
Very
Folks,
cool.
go check that out. And go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, positive comments only. Head over to YouTube. We have a whole channel there full of really great videos we're putting out all the time. Subscribe there as well so you always get that update. See you next time.